All righty. I think we are ready to go. And we first want to thank every single person for joining us today for the second uh, Vigo County Crackerbarrel session hosted by the Vigo County Public Library and sponsored by several other organizations that we will get to here briefly. My name is Rondrell Moore. I'm so honored to be your moderator. And today we're going to meet with our legislators for this area. And we're so glad that they could join us on today. So I'm going to introduce each legislator, and he or she will say who they are, kind of talk about a few things that are going on. We're going to ask that each legislator give about 2 minutes or so for an opening introduction. So let's start today, and let's start with ladies first. Representative Tanya Path.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So we're off to the races, so to speak. We finished 6 weeks. All my committees are done now. So that means this next week, I believe on Monday, we're hearing 58 bills on second reading and like 8 on third reading, which just means that all committees have been pretty busy. Some good news, we did pass out a bill for some small business loans and for $150 million in a remediation pot for what we're calling the COVID lag for students. And of course, none of this is final. So, I try not to get too excited. How's that? And then the most exciting thing for me personally is part 2 of my bill. Part 1 got passed last year. This is targeting students with disabilities who graduated from high school with a certificate of completion or dropped out because, 10 years ago, they couldn't pass the math part of the I-STEP. So last year we got it passed to create a system. And then this year, part 2 that just passed the House the other day is to now go find those kids and offer them opportunities. Because what I always say, anybody who wants to work in Indiana should be able to. They shouldn't have to pass a English I-STEP test. And that's gone now, but we're kind of trying to fix some problems of the past and help some people out. So good morning and thanks for coming.
All righty, thank you very much, Representative Pat. Let's move over to Representative Bruce Borders.
Yeah, it's, I was looking at the number of the bills that have actually been filed. I always find that to be fairly interesting. I'll try to kind of hold this up for a moment. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's kind of a grid, a bit of a grid chart there. But on the House, which I serve on the House of Representatives side, there were a total of 600 bills that were actually filed. 465 of them were assigned to committees. 135 actually got voted out of committee. 78 bills actually passed on the second reading in the House, and then 65 actually passed the House. Only one bill failed the House and in the House, and actually that had to do with more or less it was an attempt to digitize advertising on the web as far as budgets and tax increases and utility rate increases, things like that. Basically, government ads, more or less. And I was one of those that pushed for it to stay in the to actually remain in newspapers. And anyhow, that was the only bill that failed. I've always said that I would prefer to see more bills fail, but overall, starting out at 600 bills, and then a total of 67 passing the House. That's at least a pretty good rate of a death rate there. And then on the Senate, started out with, and John, I hope I'm not taking any thunder from you, there were 404 bills passed and ultimately, filed and ultimately 76 passed. Normally there are more bills in the Senate than there are on the House. This year it was almost 200 more over on the House side, but and I'll go into some of the other details later on. But again, I just want to give people perspective as to how many bills are filed. Now, normally in a long session, which is what we're in this year, there's probably 2.5 times that number of bills filed. But fortunately, we were able to winnow it down quite a bit. So I'm glad to see the numbers radically reduced. And I think that, and of course, as we've said before, the only 2 things we really have to pass this session are the budgets and then the redistricting. But obviously, we wanted to deal with the liability some of the liability protections for businesses, schools, churches, etc. on the COVID, and also on the Hoosier hospitality grants to help out hospitality businesses that are hurting as a result of the pandemic. So anyhow, that's a starting point anyhow.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Borders. Let's move on to the lone senator of the group, Senator John Ford.
Good morning. Thank you, Rondrell. Thank you to the library for hosting this once again. So on the Senate side, things are moving along equally as quickly. Just want to talk about a couple bills that I've been working on. Senate Bill 232 passed out of appropriations this week, and that would add COVID-19 to the death benefits for public safety employees. So obviously, you know, that's affected, you know, we had a firefighter here in Vigo County that lost his life to COVID. So this is something that will protect other families of public safety officers moving forward. I also was able to pass a TANF, a Temporary Assistance for Needy Families bill, out of the Senate this year. I also passed a bill on teen suicide out of the Senate. So having some good momentum on some good legislation that I'm proud of. Senate Bill 1, which I think was talked about a little bit earlier, was the liability bill. That has passed the Senate and I believe the House as well. And then Senate Bill 2, which is the virtual instruction, funding that at 100%, something that I've heard a lot about from our local school corporations all around the region, that we needed to fund that at 100%, and we have passed that over to the House. So a lot of this legislation, you know, has come from our constituents, and I think, you know, we are all on the Senate side and House side listening to what constituents need. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Ford. All right, and so that is, finally, we have Representative Bob Heaton.
Okay, thanks, Rondrell, and I appreciate the library and their sponsors for hosting us for this Cracker Barrel this morning. Representative Path is right. Getting down to crunch time, and we had a lot of bills this past week, and we're going to have a lot come Monday that we're going to take a look at as well, and the rest of this week, coming week. But one thing that we dealt with was the budget bill 1001 in the Ways and Means Committee, and you know, that bill started out being 105 pages long, and amendment number 3 went into it, and that I think the amendment was 145 pages long. So when it's all said and done, come latter part of April, that bill is probably going to be over 500 pages, like it usually is every year. But there's some of the things in the bill that a lot of people don't even know about. But one thing that the Farm Bureau wanted to make sure that we fund was the Board of Animal Health. And this deals with meat inspectors. Because of COVID, a lot of things didn't get inspected, and that's quite important. But that, obviously there was a fiscal with that, and it was $362,800 per year for this upcoming 2-year budget, and that's matched dollar for dollar with the federal grants that's out there. So you're talking about around 1.45 million. But that was very important to Farm Bureau, and it basically is going to fund about 10 meat inspectors throughout the state, and getting us back to where we used to be when it comes to inspecting meat and so forth. That was, I think, amendment number 12. That was submitted in committee by Dave Heine, who's on the Ag Committee. One thing that we passed the other day in Ways and Means was House Bill 1082, and this deals with high-tech crimes, and it establishes 10 high crime units throughout the state of Indiana. And the St. Joe prosecutor, St. Joe County prosecutor, he spoke on behalf of the bill and gave an example of a case up there that they found this criminal, if you will, and they were able to track him down with iPhones and so forth. And this is something that is very important. And I talked to the lobbyist for the prosecutors the other day, David Powell, and he said to me, he said, Bob, he said, excluding the budget bill of 1001, this is probably the most important bill in the session this year, and that's House Bill 1082. But a lot of times it's not on people's radar, certain bills, but there are a lot of good, solid legislation bills that we're looking at, and hopefully by April 29th, we'll have a lot more good quality bills that we pass. One thing I want to touch on, my bill that dealt with security matters, House Bill 1482, it did pass. And also I had a bill, House Bill 1085, the National Guard supplemental grant, that didn't get a hearing, but because of that, that bill went in this past week as an amendment into House Bill 1553 in the Education Committee. So that's passing through, and hopefully that'll go through. So anyway, but I appreciate the conversation, the dialogue we're going to have this morning. And I was at the coffee shop this morning, a local coffee shop, and one person already hit me up about Senate Bill 389, the wetlands bill. So I said, well, the Senate dealt with it, and we'll be taking a look at it in the next couple of months. But so a lot of interest there, I know. So.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you to all of our legislators for their opening comments. We should also note that Representative Alan Morrison is not here today. He was invited to attend this event. We should just make that known. And at this point, we are going to read some questions from our sponsors. Before we do that, we will tell you who our sponsors are, and they are the Vigo County Public Library, of course, the League of Women Voters of Vigo County, the Will Center, Vigo County Teachers Association, Vigo County Taxpayers Association, Greater Terre Haute branch of the NAACP, Southern Indiana Area Labor Federation. We definitely thank all of our sponsors for their involvement in today's event. So, all right, let's hop right in to our sponsorship questions. And we're going to start with the League of Women Voters, and there is a note that I am to read this question exactly as written. So here we go. In response to the high levels of voter turnout in the 2020 election and the baseless claims of voter fraud disseminated before and after the election, research by the Brennan Center indicates that there has been a fourfold increase in restrictive voter access legislation introduced in state legislatures across the United States. Among these is the proof of citizenship, which when registering to vote, bill now sitting in the Senate Elections Committee. What is your position on this piece of legislation, and to what extent do you think this legislation is different than the Kansas voter ID registration law that has been ruled unconstitutional in federal court? And so whomever would like to start, you may answer. And who did I hear?
I'll start. This is John.
Go ahead, and about a minute and a half for responses, please. Thank you.
Sure. So as chair of the Senate Election Committee, I agree with the question. I believe that citizenship language is unconstitutional. It's very similar to what Kansas has. So I would not hear the bill. Unfortunately, the way our mechanisms work, that bill that bill number is being used on Monday as a strip and insert. So that language will be taken out of the bill, and we'll see if it passes the committee. But that language on citizenship is dead in the Senate.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Ford. Yes, Representative Pat.
I sit on elections. It did not come up in the House at all. So, and we're done with elections for, this part of it. So just so you know, it's not in the House either.
All right, thank you very much. Okie dokie, moving on to the next question from our sponsor. And this one comes from the Greater Terre Haute branch of the NAACP. And it says, Duke Energy has the highest electric utility rates in the state. What, if anything, do you do about it? And do you like solar and wind energy? Do you think it would be good for our economy and create jobs that will provide a living wage?
I might respond on that.
That's Representative Borders.
Okay, first of all, I guess I'll go to the part about the solar and wind energy. All of those things are helpful, but I can still remember one day I was eating supper with with Senator Lugar before he passed away. And we were talking about, the biofuels and using renewable energy sources. And even if we took every ounce of biodiesel fuel and, every ear of corn and turned it into ethanol, that was still only going to replace, I believe, if I remember the conversation correctly, about 20% of our energy. And so, what's very frustrating to me is that we've had such an attack on our coal industry, which, Southwest Indiana is obviously, one of the coal capitals of the nation. And the fact of it is it makes energy, and electricity specifically much more affordable. And so I think the best thing we can do is rather than attacking the coal industry and then pretending as if it's solar and biofuels and wind energy can somehow replace the energy that's produced by coal. Well, that's just a bunch of nonsense. I mean, it's like, they used the saying before about that's just, skimmed milk masquerading as whole milk, but it's true. And so, I think in order, whether it be Duke Energy or no matter which electric company it would be, I think the best thing we can do is to promote, our coal industry, and then quit pretending as if, as if renewable fuels can replace everything that coal does, because the more we drive coal out of the marketplace, the higher the electric costs are going to be, regardless of which utility company we're dealing with.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Borders. And now to our final question from our sponsors, and it comes from the Taxpayers Association of Vigo County. And it asks, why is Indiana one of 24 states who have not prioritized teachers in getting the vaccine for the majority party participants? Who would like to respond to that one? All right, Representative Pat.
Don't know. I want the vaccine. So I'm not sure. I completely, look, we needed to vaccinate the older people first. There's no question. But at this point, we're at 60, right? So I believe teachers are essential workers. We help drive the economy.
Correction, I think we're actually at 65. I don't think we've gotten to 60 quite yet.
Okay, sorry, thank you. So we're at 65, but people want their kids to go back to school, and you have to protect the teachers. So to me, I really don't understand. It's time. I understand, but it's time. So somebody else can jump in now.
Senator Ford.
I'll say, I think, we're following the science. 90+% of our deaths were from 65 and up. So this first round of vaccines, we followed the science. I think the CDC came out this week with guidelines for opening schools back up, and vaccinating every teacher wasn't a part of it. They show statistically very low transmission through schools. But I think, where I struggle a little bit is, if we look at the numbers, the older a person is, the more likely they are to have a great struggle with COVID. And I don't know how we can prioritize a 30-year-old teacher over a 70-year-old person. So I think we're following the science. I think our county health department's doing a fabulous job getting folks vaccinated. And I think from what I'm reading, we'll see a pickup, and hopefully by June we'll have most people in our county vaccinated.
All right, Representative Bob Heaton has raised his hand digitally. For you, Representative Heaton.
Well, thanks, Rondrell. You're right. I think it's age 65 and up, and I'm not going to mention my age, but I'm about 7 months away from college. But anyway, I think teachers are very essential, and I'd be more than happy to let them get in front of me to get vaccinated, and because you know, I'm hearing good things as far as how the process is working right now. Some of my colleagues at the State House, they qualified and they went and got their first round of shots, and they thought it worked out very well, very organized and so forth. But so I know people's got different views on getting vaccinated and so forth, but I think you know, it was amazing how the vaccine got out there in a very quick manner, and so I think we're getting there. So, but I think that the teachers ought to be involved and get vaccinated very quickly.
All right, thank you very much. All right, and that concludes our sponsor questions. So we're getting ready to move into our participant and viewer questions. And we just want to note a couple of things. We're going to give each representative or senator a minute and a half to respond. And as we decided kind of in the last session, not everyone has to respond to every question. So if you don't necessarily have anything to add, you don't have to respond per se. And for those of you who would like to submit a question, we encourage you to go at the bottom of your screen to that little dialogue bubble that says Q&A. That's where we ask that you ask your questions. There's also one that says chat, and that'll give other information, but if you could use the Q&A function to submit your questions, and we will try to get through as many of them as we can. And I have a few questions already right here, and this is to everybody on the board. Who is replacing FSSA's Southeastern in May of 2021? That is a question that has been submitted. Does anyone have an answer for that? And that's all the question says. So maybe we might be able to get some clarification on that. Yes, Representative Heaton.
Repeat the question again.
I will. And it is, who is replacing FSSA's Southeastern in May of 2021?
Southeast what?
Southeastern in May. Medicaid transportation is what I'm being told that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Representative, I think Path, I saw your hand, and then Representative Heaton will get to you.
Right, and I can switch over to Bob if he knows more, but as far as I know, they're still just discussing it, and it's a process. So when you get a contract, then the state looks at every contract differently. So as far as I know at this point, there's not been anything, any decision.
All right. Representative Heaton?
Yeah, actually I was scratching my cheek.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, no, that's okay. But I agree with Representative Path, what she said. It's a lot of us don't quite know the exact processes. What's and this is the first time I've heard about it actually, and so we'll see how it goes from here. But obviously it's an important issue, and we'll see what happens in the next few months.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, let's move on now to the next question. And this is there any possibility to legislate like business currently having available in public streets parking spaces for service providers at private residents? And I'll read that one more time. Is there any possibility to legislate like business currently having currently have available in public streets parking spaces for service providers at private residents?
Go
ahead, Senator Ford.
So that's really, I think, a local government question. And, you know, I think that would be a city council or county council or commissioner kind of question. You know, and I am not a huge fan of us trying to legislate things at the state level and tell communities. So I think that would advise that person who asked that question to reach out to their local city councilman.
And I have a clarification on that question here that says basically businesses can designate a parking space for service providers. Can citizens do the same at their homes? And
again, I think that's a local ordinance kind of issue, and you know, I would advise them to approach their county council. Sorry, Bruce.
Sure. Representative Borders?
Yeah, what I might mention actually as a former mayor, you know, for example, you know, just like on the street outside of the ambulance offices there in Jasonville, you know, it'll have, you know, ambulance parking only, or you'll have certain designated spots, you know, police parking only, and that type of thing. And I assume that for an individual to request that at a private residence, it would have to be somebody that has, I mean, I can't imagine that they're having so much police activity that there would be, police parking only, but I assume it would maybe be somebody who has like a healthcare provider that sees them on a regular basis, that type of thing. And most cities can actually pass ordinances where those vehicles are allowed to go ahead and pull over, without having a sign. I mean, if you had signs at all of the private residences where somebody wanted that, it would probably not happen frequently enough to basically take away that parking area, because because you're still, you've got other citizens who are going to need to park in that place most of the time. But it's just like, for example, like on a no parking side of the street, a lot of times delivery vehicles, whether it be somebody delivering oxygen or medical supplies, they are allowed by local ordinance to go ahead and do that. So I would say that kind of almost by caveat, that actually is already allowed. And it's probably in most cities' ordinances, although they probably aren't going to go to the extreme of putting up a sign and limiting it to a service vehicle 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, but they're also not going to ticket them for pulling up there and delivering oxygen or medical supplies. So hopefully that helps out on that anyhow.
All right. Thank you for answering that question. All right, let's move on now to the next question that was submitted in. And it is, one of the issues I believe will help with getting issues to the forefront is to get as many people to run for office, not just from the major parties. Would you work on bills like that, such as House Bill 1130 and 1215, instead of limiting them, House Bill 1134? Why or why not? Who would like to take this question?
I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Representative.
When they say instead of limiting them, I don't know how are they being limited? I'm not sure what they're meaning by that.
I am not quite sure as well. Potentially the person who wrote that can send a follow-up, but for the time being, basically asking the question, would you support bills that encourage people from non-major parties to run for office? And Representative Path.
I think this has to do, if I remember, with some issues that came up with libertarian and minor parties. And yes, I support as many people as possible running for office, especially women. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I have not read the two bills referenced, but I'm with Senator Papp. I believe it has something to do with the libertarian parties and how they get on the ballot. But I'm open to everybody running, and libertarians should have every right as Republicans or Democrats to get on the ballots.
All right, very much.
Go ahead, Representative. Question. I don't believe that a libertarian candidate has to actually get as many signatures and so forth as the major parties. So I would argue that probably it's in a sense easier for them to get on the ballot than it is difficult. I believe they aren't held to the same standard as far as the number of signatures that are required and so forth, if I remember correctly.
All right, thank you very much. And let's move on to the next question. Educators are feeling less respected by several bills this year. Also, the governor has chosen not to make educators priority for the COVID vaccine, as we've mentioned. What do you suggest the educators do? Would you support your local educators should do a state, or would you support your local educators should a statewide walkout occur? Who would like that one?
Well,
go ahead, Representative.
Yeah, I might say that actually, I'm not sure what bills they're specifically referring to, but I know, I forget the exact figure, and actually Bob, by being on Ways and Means, and Tanya, by being a teacher, not trying to put you guys in the, throw you into the middle of this, but probably will know more. But I know we were restoring 100% of education funding, even, for children who are learning digitally at home and so forth. and then there was a substantial amount of additional money. And again, I don't want to pretend that I remember all of the numbers. And again, they may know that better than I can, but I feel like there's actually been a pretty solid effort to actually treat education with respect.
All right.
I'll weigh in.
Representative Path, yes.
Okay, so as far as a statewide walkout, that's a tough decision as both a teacher and a legislator. I would have a really hard time as a teacher walking out. But saying that, if I'm in the classroom and everyone's doing it, I would do it. But here's my problem. 15,000 people showed up at the State House for the Red for Ed Day about a year and a half ago and saying, hey, look, there's a crisis. So then the Governor's Commission spent about 18 months studying the problem, right? And came up with $600 million that we need to get equitable with, other states around us. And yeah, that's a huge ask. And yes, all decisions are local. I get that. But the problem is, what I've witnessed and being on Ways and Means in Education is, so you have a chunk of money, and although we would like all that money, to go to public schools or whatever, there is money coming into education, there's no question, but they're also siphoning it out for new programs. I believe it's 1005 is creating more access for vouchers and also making educational savings accounts for people. And, I think at the end of the day, COVID has taught us that kids really need, or actually prefer, to be in the classroom. And as far as respect for teachers, at the end of the day, if you make $38,000 and across the border, 10 minutes in Illinois, they're paying 42, you're going to leave. So the conversation, there has to be more money for teachers. I'm not sure what the best way to do that is, but we have to do something. So that's where I stand.
Representative Heaton, I saw your hand.
Well, I do not support a statewide strike or walkout for teachers. I know the governor, his recommendation was to, I think the funding number was $377 million that would go to K through 12 education as far as pertaining to this House Bill 1001. Our amendment the other day, and increased it just by $1 million, but it was $378 million that will go to K through 12 funding. The thing of it is, it's this goes back a few years ago, but I know in Vigo County, I want to say 5-6 years ago, starting out here in this county, it was the school corporation. I think it was $32,000 what a teacher starting out would make. Over in Clay County, that number was, I believe, $38,000 starting out, just a few miles to the east of here. So it boils down to the locals make that decision, how much funding will go towards teachers and their salaries and compensation. So, again, it's, I don't want to have anything like they've done in some bigger cities like Chicago, for instance, and having walkouts and strikes and so forth, because the kids are the one that's really suffering from things like that. So I wouldn't support a statewide walkout.
Senator Ford.
Thank you, Rondrell. So, this is an issue, I think, that, kind of the messaging, I believe, it hasn't been working. I think for teachers to even contemplate a statewide workout is kind of tone deaf to what we're hearing from parents. I mean, I'm hearing from parents every day that want their kids back to school. They want choice for their kids. They want their kids to be educated. And I think the way they've been going about this is really moving the pendulum in terms of the average taxpayer, the average citizen is kind of getting tired of some of these arguments. I will say I had one bill that I filed on collective bargaining. that ISTA and I've been working on for 2 years. And what's interesting about that bill is, to me, there were some rights taken away that teachers should be allowed to bargain. But I don't hear from teachers about it. Other than ISTA, they're not really interested in their bargaining rights. And the way that this process works is, we give the school corporation money, the local unions bargain their wages. And it's just interesting to me that I'm not sure they want to solve the problem. I think they want to just have political arguments. I mean, I think collective bargaining and giving teachers more rights for collective bargaining is a way to solve some of this teacher pay thing. I mean, in this bill, there's also language about pools of money, deficit financing, where there's $1.3 billion that school corporations have squirreled away that aren't used for teacher wages. And in some of these school corporations, it's more than 100% of their annual budget that is squirreled away, not allowed to be used for collective bargaining. So I think, we could take half of that, push it towards teacher pay, and we could really raise it up. But at the other point I would like to make is when they do bargain, we need to make sure that they're taking care of these younger teachers. And I'm not sure how we do that, because one of the biggest complaints I get through email from teachers are newer teachers that have been there, for a year to 5 years, and they seem to be get the short end of the shaft when it comes to collective bargaining. And I hear that quite a bit. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for those responses. Let's move on to our next question, and it is on a similar theme. And it says multiple bills, both House and Senate Bill, or rather House Bill 1005 and Senate Bill 412 and Senate Bill 413, look to expand vouchers in our state. Indiana already has one of the largest voucher programs in the nation. Where do you stand on these bills that expand vouchers while still not requiring the same oversight required of public schools for quality of services provided by those funds?
Can I go first?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So I don't support expansion of vouchers at this point. Again, I think, we have a tight budget. I'm not sure why we're looking to expand the vouchers when we have other needs that we need to fund. So I'm not supportive of it, but I will tell you that, judging by what I'm hearing from constituents, more and more local taxpayers are looking for alternatives to public education.
Representative Borders, let's go with you. And then
yeah, one of the things I'll mention, which is, fits into that conversation. I hear a lot, of angst about charter schools, for example, and I know there's some frustration with charter schools, but I will, I'll give you an example of two that are in my district. I mean, you've got the Rural Academy at Graysville, and in fact, I believe when John Gregg was state representative in District 45, I think John was the one that helped, create, the Rural Academy. And then, of course, at Duggar, we've got the charter school as well. And in both cases, though, and in all fairness to both of those schools, it really wasn't a matter of anybody being dissatisfied with what you would class as a traditional public school. It had more to do with geography than anything. And, just like in Graysville, a lot of the students would have, they would be on a bus, for probably a couple of hours each morning and each evening if they were, having to be bused in, for example, into Sullivan or, and as opposed to being in their own geography. And so the parents supported it, the parents of the kids. Same thing with Duggar. I mean, those parents, they worked their butts off to help make that school a reality, and it's doing very well. And it's like I tell people, I don't view them as an adversary. I view them as just simply another public school that basically people chose to, in both cases, to keep a school alive because it helped keep their communities alive. And so, and I've never had anyone that really can refute that. you know, the fact of it is again, these communities wanted to keep a school, and whenever they were in danger of losing their traditional public school, or they did lose their traditional public school, the parents jumped in and fought to recreate a charter school in both of those instances.
All right, Representative Path, I saw you raise your hand earlier, and then Representative Heaton, I know you used the feature, so Representative Path, go ahead.
Right, so I just do not expand, I don't want to expand or create new programs. You know, there's no, in my mind, there's no reason. We have two different systems right now. We have public, and then we have others, and they're held to different standards. And that's my biggest problem with it. We had a long conversation about bullying in the House the other night on Ways and Means. And, you know, the fact of the matter, that's just one small example. You know, public schools have about this much requirements, and charter and vouchers have about this much. And that's what I don't support. I don't support having different standards. You know, it's all state money. So if you're going to take state money, and it's education, you know, everyone should be held to the same exact standard. And that's what I can't grasp.
All right, Representative Heaton.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think the big issue of 1005 deals with taking the household income from 96,000 up to 146,000. I think that's what the numbers are. So, which means I want to say potentially there could be 18,000 more students that will go from maybe public schools to private schools by using that scholarship. But I agree with what Senator Ford said as far as giving parents more options. What it boils down to a choice if they want to do that. I've said it before. I think people get tired of it, but my daughter homeschools my grandkids up until a certain age, and my oldest grandchild is going to traditional public schools. And Daniel simply loves it. It's fantastic. He loves the students and the kids and the interaction. And but that's my daughter's choice to do that. Now, and so my granddaughter here in about 7 months or whenever is going to go to the 5th grade, and she's going to go to elementary school. And she's looking forward to that. But again, the parent or the parents have that choice to make, and it just gives them more options.
All right, thank you very much. And just a note here from the library and myself, due to the amount of questions received, which is a really good thing, we will ask your first question. And if we have time, we're going to circle back to any additional questions that you have. So keep submitting your questions. We just may not be able to answer every question that you have, which is a good problem to have for sure. All right, let's move on to the next question today. And it is, where do each of the legislators stand on House Bill 1369, the so-called constitutional carry law? If you support the bill, can you explain why you believe that making guns easier to obtain is an important policy issue? And this is asked to all of the legislators, but again, if you do not have a response, you do not have to respond. But who would like to start? Representative Borders.
Yeah, the fact of it is, first of all, I do support it. But secondly, I did take a vow to uphold the constitutions of the United States and of the state of Indiana. And constitutional carry doesn't mean that somebody who's had felonies and so forth is going to be able to go buy a gun. I mean, there's still going to be the background checks and so forth prior to purchasing a gun. And what it means, though, is that you simply, if you are crime-free and you want to purchase a handgun, you have the right to do that without having to license it. Now, in all frankness, a lot of people are going to go ahead and purchase a license to carry anyhow, because they will want reciprocity with other states. I've talked to a number of gun owners who have said, I'm going to go ahead and pay that license fee because I want to be able to go into other states that have reciprocity with the state of Indiana. And so, you know, it will make it easier only in the sense, you know, that basically if you choose, I'm seeing a little note there about something about licensing, but only if you know, again, if you've been crime free and you choose to purchase a gun and don't want to obtain a license, you don't have to do that. But if you choose to purchase that so you can have reciprocity in other states, that can be your choice as well.
Let me hop in here really quickly, and thank you for the dialogue going back and forth, but we ask that you keep those directly for the legislators after the fact. We have their email and their phone numbers and information.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. And that's both to the viewers and also to the panelists as well, so that we don't necessarily have a back and forth, that you submit your questions by the question and answer function only.
Sorry.
All right. No, you're completely fine. Representative Path, go ahead.
Yes, I'm against this. You know, so if you want to hunt, if you want to fish, if you want to get a driver's license, we have a system of checks and balances. You know, I agree. If you want to carry a gun, that's fine. I have no problem with guns, but there's a reason that we have a licensing process. And, you know, for me, every 4 years, I have to renew my driver's license. And let's just talk about driving. You know, they want to make sure I can see before I get behind the wheel. So to me, you know, just keep the licensing in check.
All right, thank you very much. Representative Heaton, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, Rondrell. Yeah, I talked to Representative Ben Smalls, who's carrying the bill, and this has been discussed the last year or two, and I think at one time the Sheriff's Association was against it because they were going to lose millions of dollars in revenue. And I think now, I want to say this year, they're neutral on it. I think the state police, they're against it. This was in public policy just the other day, and we're going to be looking at it on second reading this coming week, as well as third reading. But I it's kind of a personal question, but I went ahead and got my permit six months ago. And it did cost me $12.95 and to get my fingerprints. But there's still background checks and so forth. And so when somebody, you know, I think some people think, well, gosh, that means anybody can walk up and just get a gun and walk out the door with it. And but still, there's going to be a lot of oversight, and it's still regulated. But kind of got what Representative Waters said. It's a constitutional right for somebody to carry if they're lawful and not a felon.
All right, thank you very much. I think I got everybody who wanted to respond on that question. Let's move along to the next one. And Representative Heaton, you mentioned Senate Bill 389 concerning Indiana wetlands. And this question just wonders, what are other members of the panel's opinions on that bill?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I was at the coffee shop this morning, and somebody mentioned to me about Senate Bill 389 that deals with wetlands and so forth. But as I mentioned to this person this morning, that I think it came about where I think it was maybe northeast of Indianapolis. There was land that was part of a wetlands property or mitigation issue up there that it wanted to be developed. And I think this is where it started. And I think that's why the Senate, I think it's Senate Bill 389 that went through the Senate the other day, and we're going to be taking a look at it. I do have quite a few people in my district that is for that bill to go through. And I know Farm Bureau supports that. And I had an individual yesterday from Ducks Unlimited share his viewpoint that he's against it. But for the most part, I support it, but I'm willing to work with the Department of Natural Resources. They do want to talk to me in the next few weeks about it, and I'm open to that discussion.
Senator Ford.
Yes, thank you, Rondrell. So Senate Bill 389, I did vote for it, to vote it out of the Senate to keep the bill moving. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I think, you know, where this issue really has come is, you know, over the years, I've had lots of talk about isolated wetlands program and how many small business owners, farmers feel that IDEM is heavy-handed with this program. You know, I'll remind everybody that this bill came into place in 2003. We are one of 8 states that has a isolated wetlands program, one of 8. And in 2003, when that bill was passed, the governor at the time, Frank O'Bannon, vetoed it. And why he vetoed it was he was concerned about regulating private property, and it could be a program that is could run amok. And I think what we have seen is it has run amok. I mean, I've had one farmer who is scared to death to talk to the media, come to the State House and testify. But what happened to him is just, to me, shows why this is an issue. He farmed this land. His grandfather farmed the land. His father farmed the land. A draining tile broke. Before he could get there to fix it, about 2 months, it was designated a wetland area. A piece of farmland that he had farmed his whole life. And this guy's in his 60s. And when IDEM came out, IDEM told him he had a couple of choices. 1, plant 800 trees and never farm that area again. 2, find another chunk of land and plant 1,600 trees and never farm that again, or pay $80,000 to a wetland mitigation bank. And those banks, just so everybody knows, are owned and run by former IDEM employees. And we passed that legislation back in 2018, and they are bringing in tens of millions of dollars, and small businesses and farmers are paying the brunt of it. And there's really been no way to appeal it. You know, IDEM goes to the farmer, is very aggressive with them, tells them they can't farm the land that they've had for generations. I just think that's government run amok. It's big government controlling how someone makes a living and on their own private property. And that's where I think there's a lot of stuff we've seen in the news is not represented well, right? It's isolated wetlands only. So it's not going to affect DNR wetlands. The wetlands are still protected by the federal government. And it's isolated wetlands. And it's interesting that the news media never talks to small business owners or farmers on the issue. And I think, you know, it is incumbent upon them to get the full view of the story, not just one. And I would encourage everybody to go back and look at the history. Again, one of 8 states that has an isolated wetlands program. This isn't wetlands, it's isolated wetlands on private property, basically making private property owners get a permit from the government to farm their own land or develop their own land. And I personally believe the program's run amok. I think what will happen personally is by this time this bill gets through the House, it'll be a much better bill and there will be an isolated wetlands program. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Ford. We are going to move on to the next question, which is, what is being done to increase access to mental health care, especially with increased stress due to the pandemic? What plans are being made to have trained mental health professionals respond to calls relating mental health crises? We'd like to start with that. Yes, Representative Heaton.
Well, I work with, they're not in my district, but Stone Belt in Bloomington. I've worked with Leslie Green for the last 10 years, and she does a fabulous job. She works with ARC of Indiana, and I know their main focus this past couple months was more funding for the direct support professionals. And I don't know how many are out there, but in some cases, the average is $11.25 per hour for these direct professionals. And they were asking, ARC of Indiana was asking $80 million. for this 2-year budget. And what the Republicans put in House Bill 1001 the other day was 40 million. And I got a lot of good response from them. They're very happy. I don't know what the Senate's going to do, whether they're going to increase that amount or lower it, but in the next couple of months. But I think it's something the right direction, and my heart goes out to those people. But the clients, they always come up to the State House. Because of COVID this year, they cannot. But I always get my picture taken with them. And again, their Stone Belt is down in Bloomington. They're about a few miles from further east of my district. But I tell you what, it's not just there; it's throughout the whole state. And the great people, and do all we can to help support them financially. It's very important to me.
All right, Representative Pat.
So there's no question we need more mental health funding. So I think where we're at now is, we just talked about the budget Thursday night. So from my understanding, because this is the first time on Ways and Means, now it goes over to Senator Ford, where he gets to personally pick it all apart. So, it's a process, right? And what I have learned is, from this COVID, there's just so much need out there. So hopefully this conversation will continue and we'll be able to put some more resources toward that issue.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, Senator Ford, go ahead.
Thank you. So, like everyone here, I am deeply concerned of the mental health of our children. And just yesterday, Representative Path and I were with the Vigo County School Corporation and got to hear some of what they're experiencing before COVID and during COVID. And it's honestly alarming. It was very sad to hear some of that information. And, I think that, it's one reason why I brought the Senate Bill 19, which to try to help with teen suicide, because we are seeing the rates of suicide go up for teens, the planning of suicides go up. I do know with some of our CARES Act money, and we did create a number of grant programs through Okra and the health department to help with mental health in Indiana. My hope would be with some of this current relief money that we have, that we would throw it into mental health programs. I believe Hamilton Center got a very large grant to deal with mental health illness, $3 million, I believe. But, my hope is that we can, in the budget and with some of the relief money, put more money towards mental health, because I think there's no doubt about it. All the experts say people are really struggling because of isolation right now. Thank you.
And Representative Borders.
Yeah, and something I might mention, in several instances here, my colleagues have mentioned about, the COVID having a huge impact on people's mental health, and I completely agree that is true. But what I want to point out too is that, some other bills that aren't necessarily addressing just mental health by itself, but just like some of the liability immunities and so forth designed to get businesses up and running again, and just like the hospitality grants for the hospitality industry, which has been hit really hard, and actually, quite frankly, some of our poorest employees in the state of Indiana who work in that industry, and it's designed to help those businesses out as well. I said it, a month ago when we met here. Well, I happened to be at the library, but anyhow, it's imperative that we reopen society. I mean, it can safely be done so. In fact, I won't get on too big of a bandwagon on this issue, but I've seen numerous instances where when individuals are in front of cameras, and I'm talking some large groups, I won't go into great detail right now, but I'll see people wearing masks like crazy. And then I'll see those same groups later, where when there's no cameras around, the masks get removed. And we've seen that happen, for example, the governor of California, is shutting down the entire state, and then they go to that restaurant and they have the big party and so forth. And I'm like going, come on, let's get real about this stuff. I know that my son lives out in Montana and works out there. The new governor there just he struck down the statewide mask mandate. They're reopening the state of Montana, and the fact of it is you know, when you look at the figures, you look even at the CDC figures. I think like 6%. And the deaths are terrible, but I can't remember if it was Bob earlier mentioned or one of our colleagues had mentioned about, you know, that it was mostly the aged population, and we do have to protect them. But I will say this, that so many things have been shut down, and in my opinion, unnecessarily, that we've got to reopen society, and that will do wonders for mental health of people as well.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Borders. We're going to move on now, and believe it or not, we are just right about the 10-minute mark of our question and answer period. But we're going to move on now to the next question, which is, with Senate Bill 19 hoping to provide multiple resources for students as the Suicide Prevention Hotline and Human Trafficking Hotline, will local mental health institutions also be asked to increase efforts to help out local community children and students? And Senator Ford, I know you dealt a lot with that.
As I said earlier, you know, we did have a great discussion yesterday, Senator or Representative Paff and I, with the school corporation. Our local mental health institutions were present. Lieutenant Governor was there, the Chamber of Commerce, Thrive West Central. So it was a great group of people that I think have to collaborate to help solve this problem. It's a community issue, and the community needs to solve it. And I think they're all trying to do work. That Hamilton Center grant that I mentioned, I believe, has to do with crisis management and a way to help children and families before it escalates into a serious problem. But I know they'll be launching that, and I think there'll be a lot more news on the Hamilton Center project.
Thank you very much. Representative Paff.
Thank you, Rondrell. So as John and I sat there yesterday, it's, you know, there's a stigma on mental health, right? If you see somebody with a broken foot, you're like, oh, your foot's broken. And, you know, that's on the outside. But mental health is just, people don't like to talk about it because it's uncomfortable, right? But we need to, as a community, advance that conversation. As a teacher, I was just sitting here thinking about it, at least 4 teenage funerals, and it's just very, very difficult. So what we need to do, and you know, that's part of going back to in-person education. I think teachers really do a good job of, we see these kids, right, for 70 minutes or 50 minutes or whatever. And, you know, every day you see a kid and you start to sort of get their rhythm as they get our rhythm. And I'm just such an advocate of getting the conversation out there and helping. But, you know, John is completely right. And, you know, that's part of the conversation yesterday was, as a community, we need to do whatever we can to help people.
And Representative Heaton, I saw your hand.
Yes, it's, I'm sorry I couldn't participate in that discussion yesterday with Lieutenant Governor Crouch, but it's, you know, when it comes to mental illness and depression and suicide, there's no discrimination involved. Our son Travis, he committed suicide back in 2014. But, you know, he was here with us for 27 years, 278 days, and it's very special. But it affects a lot of people, and but it's something that you know, we have to do all we can to help that situation with people. And but again, it can happen to any one of us. I happen to read that Suzanne Crouch, Lieutenant Governor, lost his sister through suicide, which I wasn't aware of until I read her comments from the meeting yesterday. But it was, it's something that we try to do all we can for those individuals, and they're very special people, and I'm thankful for it.
Oh, and Representative Heaton, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that topic. We appreciate it. All right, we are, like I said, getting closer to the end, but I think we can squeeze out at least one more question. And this question is, where do you stand on LGBTQ rights, and what are you doing to protect Indiana's transgender community? House Bill 1458 works to erode progress that's been made for the transgender community and would make entering a restroom not consistent with the gender assigned at birth a misdemeanor. According to the National Center for Transgender Equality, law enforcement agencies in cities and states with non-discrimination laws that include non-gender specific restrooms report no increases in public safety incidents. Who would like to speak on that?
I will.
Representative Borders.
Well, first of all, I'll tell people to follow the science. And it is true that we were born male and female. And quite frankly, if you look, for example, and I'll go into the sports arena as what's going on now with these males who are basically, I'm going to call it posing as females. Quite frankly, the one fellow that's a boxer who's broken the jaws of several females and done serious bodily injury. And I was looking at a guy that I believe is a rugby player over in Australia, the same thing. Just because, that's not going to change the DNA of that individual. All right. And I do not want some situation where, for example, my granddaughter is in a restroom and some guy comes in and basically decides that he's going to be a female that day, just simply because somebody changes their attire, doesn't change their DNA or their makeup. And we were born, like the Bible tells us, that we were created as male and female. And I do not support this doing away with the sexes as God created us. And I think it's wrong. And I will continue to fight the erosion of the male and female status.
All right, Representative Borders. Anyone else? All right. Well, let's move on to, I think we have time for another question. Is there any bill or discussion about eliminating the death penalty in Indiana? Now, obviously, we know that in Terre, Haute, that is a federal situation, but in terms of any Indiana law to representatives and senators, is there any bill or discussion about eliminating the death penalty in Indiana from a state standpoint? Representative Heaton. Let's start with Heaton. He had his hand up first.
That's fine.
Okay, I haven't heard any discussion on that at the State House or even in the hallways of the State House pertaining to that. So I don't even, there was, I think Representative Borders or somebody said how many hundreds of bills we have that was filed a couple months ago, but I don't think there's anything that's been a file pertaining to the death penalty. And I know it's a big issue in this area because we have the federal prison here, and I don't know how many people that were put to death in the last year or two, but it always brings up national news. And there in Terre, Indiana, they've got another execution scheduled. But again, there's nothing. I believe that me and my colleagues have filed a bill that pertains to this at all.
Representative Borders.
Yes, there are some crimes that are so heinous, the only appropriate punishment is the death penalty. And I know recently one of the big things was made about the woman who was recently received the death penalty. Well, you look at and see what she did. Basically, she had killed a woman and cut her baby out of her and sold her baby. Well, to me, putting an individual like that to death is simply, it is punishment for a heinous crime. It was a taking of a life, and so you know, people talk about, you know, the death penalty being murder. No, it is not. It is punishment for a crime that is so heinous. Again, some crimes are so heinous that the only appropriate punishment is, or the only appropriate penalty is the death penalty.
All right. Well, with that, I do believe that we are going to conclude our question and answer period. We want to thank every single person for submitting your questions to our representatives and to our senator. We are at this time going to leave 2 minutes for each legislator to have closing comments on today's discussion, and we will start with Representative Borders.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm glad that we're doing was House Bill 1002. I've got some notes here, but basically it's to, you know, as I was mentioning earlier about reopening society, and it's designed to provide some liability protection for businesses that both currently and in the past as well, so they can reopen. And also it's not designed to allow for gross negligent conduct in running a business. But you know, I'm glad in the state of Indiana, I feel like we probably closed down more than was necessary by without question, but at least we didn't completely close down like some states did. And so I'm glad to see things reopening. Want to see them reopen much quicker, to be frank with you. But you know, as the budget's coming along, it looks like we're truly going to have an honestly balanced budget where we are not spending more than what we take in. And under these circumstances that we faced with the reduced revenues coming in, we're, you know, doing pretty well on that. So again, you know, we're just about done with the first half of session, and we're you know, so there's still quite a bit of the ball game left. But I've been very well pleased with the progress that's being made, and then things are moving along pretty well. So.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Borders. Let's move on now to Representative Pat.
Thank you, Rondrell. So thank you, audience, for tuning in today. I think it's so important to take the time and listen to our opinions, who is representing you. So like, for example, on Bruce's 1458, I was looking up the bill, the LGBTQ. I'm so against that. But here's the good thing. As we go through this process, you know, I have respect for all my fellow legislators. And I think what makes Indiana different than what happens nationally, we were talking a lot about yesterday about people being kind, is that although I disagree with Bruce, you know what, I can still have a good conversation with him. And I think that's so important right now where we are in society, is to try to help come back together, so to speak. And it's okay to disagree with each other, but you know, there's no reason to be rude or mean. I think it's my teacher point here. So I just wanted to thank you again for tuning in, and please don't ever hesitate to reach out to our offices. That's what we're here for. We're here to represent you. So thank you again.
Thank you, Representative Pat. Let's move along to Representative Heaton.
Okay, thank you. It's boy, the time flies by quick, doesn't it, when you're done? One thing, yeah, it's again, as we all talk about, that it is a process, and this is my 11th year, and this is my 6th long session in dealing with the budget. But again, there's a lot going on, and another 2+ months to go. But again, a lot of things that can change, or that can be put in a Senate bill or a House bill that's over in the Senate and so forth. So we'll see how things go. Getting back to the one question before about the death penalty. And I respect people's opinions, and they protest and that type of thing. But I know a lot of people in this area is very glad that Timothy McVeigh took his last breath several years ago, right down here at the federal prison. And I don't know, when was it, 26 years ago or so, he killed, you know, 60-some, 70-some men and women and children there in Oklahoma City, and which is very, very tragic. But it's, again, everybody respect their opinions, viewpoints on that. But it's something that we've had the last few years here, the executions in Terre Haute. But anyway, so I appreciate the opportunity to participate, and hopefully we'll be back next month.
All right, thank you, Representative Heaton. And today we will give the last word to our lone senator, Senator Ford.
Thank you, Rondrell. So back to the death penalty question. In the Senate, we did send to the House Senate Bill 252, which is a study committee on the death penalty. So I think the goal is we would review the death penalty this summer at some point. So my colleagues in the House, it's coming your way to debate. I'd like to end just by talking a little bit about my TANF bill. I've received some negative email on that bill, and I get asked, why do I constantly push for the TANF bill? And I guess my rebuttal to that, and why I want people to know why I work on that, is when we look in my district by the numbers, childhood poverty is 22%. That's 4 points higher than the state average. Our poverty rate is 19.9%. That's 89th out of 92 counties. 33% of our population is on Medicaid. 58% of our mothers who have given birth are on Medicaid. 43 out of 1,000 kids have been neglected or abused in our county, in Vigo County, in Clay County. That's why I work on bills like TANF. That's why I file bills on teen suicide. Our community is in trouble. And I think together as a community, the business community, the legislature, the county, the city, we all have to work together to improve those numbers. It's embarrassing to me that our poverty rate is 89th out of 92 counties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just would like to thank all of the legislators. I would like to thank all of you for watching on today. We talked about a lot of very intense topics today, civilly, as we always do, which is a wonderful thing here. I just want to encourage you that if you have follow-up questions for any of the legislators, the Vigo County Library has done a wonderful job of posting all of their contact information right in the chat session, so you can reach out to them. We have their phone numbers, and we also have their email addresses. It's a little good of the order. Our next virtual session will be Saturday, and that will be March the 13th. Yes, March the 13th. That'll be Saturday, March the 13th. So we'll join you for the similar format. We're so grateful to be able to have a format where we can reach out to our legislators. So again, I'm Rondrell Moore. Thank you all so much. Thank you, legislators. I hope you have a wonderful day.